Hi, John.
Hey, Jerry, how you doing?
Can you stop recording till after we figure out who's here?
Sure.
Guys. Good evening, folks.
Hello.
How are you? How's everybody doing? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take attendance and then we'll go through the agenda as you have it. Okay.
Turn that up.
Okay. All right. So I see John. I see me. Okay. Ken. Don. Okay. Russell.
Oh, you gotta start your video.
Okay. Russell is CBK Zoom 5. John. Okay. Mary, I see you. Hi. BJ, I see you. Dan, I see you. Skip, I see
I'm
you.
gonna see if I can turn it up on the computer.
I know that Stephanie's not joining us because she had a conflict with another meeting. Okay, but I also have all the information of things that she and I have talked about in the last month for you to ask questions about if you need it. Let's see. That takes care of the committee. That takes care of our committee members. And I see that there is a Robert Tenza from the public. Who, can you identify yourself, please?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, yeah, I'm Rob Tenza. I work for Arcadis. We offer owners project management services, and just saw that your project was going through some design stuff and just wanted to listen in. And
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us.
yeah, no
Okay.
problem.
We will have public comment at the end of our agenda if you wish to chime in on anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. We don't have any guests according to our agenda tonight. We do need to take a look at the minutes for the November meeting quickly. I do have one correction, and I apologize again, BJ, for leaving you off. He needs to be added to the attendance as present, so I'll make sure that happens as an amendment for this, for these minutes. Is there anything else on the November 10th minutes that need to be corrected, added? Take a look. Do you have anything? Okay, can I have a motion to accept the minutes as amended?
I make a motion to accept the minutes as amended.
Okay, Skip, second, please. Can I have a second?
Second.
Oh, gosh, everybody wants to second it, so I'm going to pick somebody. Russell, you're seconding it this time. Okay, and is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chime in. Okay, and okay, we're good. All right, next thing on the agenda, we have no communications from anyone. So we'll go straight to old business. I'd like a really quick review of the November 10th conceptual plan presentation made by Point One. I have to tell you that Stephanie and I have been going to every group that meets in the center right now, and there are a lot of people coming into the center. And as each class finishes, she or I have been talking to them about the plan, talking to them about meetings that could be coming up. But so far, we've had tremendous positive response. I posted in the center itself the larger graphics that we have, so that people can take a look at them. And we can try to answer questions as they come up. But the presentation itself was really well received, and I really think that the Connecticut Examiner article actually helped in some ways, but we'll get into that later. Okay. Does there anybody else that have any comment about the November 10th presentation? It was pretty good, don't you think? Okay. All right, let's move on to new business. The next plan for the future is a multi-step thing that we need to talk about. After talking with Russell and with Point One, because I actually approached them to see if they're still interested in being part of our team down the road. Dan and I have talked about how to set up maybe a timeline, first of all, about how to take the next steps. And the recommendation is that maybe we take the next 6 months to address all the available town funding that we might need to go for. And also any other funding that we can initiate or research, so that when we get to mid 2022, we will be able to launch a schematic design and have that available. What I'd like to do is ask you as the committee to help me start thinking about ways to raise money. I will tell you that I have worked in Joe Courtney's office. I worked with them as late as yesterday. They have our feasibility study. They've asked a couple of questions about anything specific that they might research grants for us for, say, something like energy efficiency or sustainability. Okay, well, get that out fast. And I was thinking that might not be a bad avenue to pursue if they can find grants for that, or new technologies. Other technologies that we may be able to institute at the center for advancement for our members, for computer usage, computer access, electronic usage, training, any of those things that we found during this pandemic were a deficit for a lot of our members. But those are my two thoughts, because I was thinking if we could find a way to do more energy efficiency, the towns like to see that as a, but also as a future cost savings for that. And also if we could find technology grants that will help us, that we don't have to ask the towns to give us money for. Does anybody have any other thoughts that they might like to share about what Courtney's office can investigate? I can tell you that he does several grant applications through different federal agencies, and he does 8 to 10 of them a year. And I do know that one other senior center here in Connecticut did receive a very substantial grant in the past 5 years for the work that they've done with Meals on Wheels, and they got a beautiful grant from the Department of Agriculture. So I think there are multiple ways we can look at through his office on the federal level, but I don't know much about how to do grants at the state level yet, except for steep grants. Skip. Skip, I can't hear you. Wait a minute. Skip, are you not mic'd?
There I go.
There we go.
There you go. What about grants for solar panels and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, that's what I mean. in terms of energy efficiency.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing that point one didn't integrate into their conceptual plan, but maybe it's something we should investigate is,
Very proof.
yeah, okay. So solar possibly. Anybody else have any ideas? Russell, you're
No,
like,
I have no ideas, but solar is great and we should look at it, but it doesn't matter if you can't afford the building under the solar, so. We need to make sure that you can build the building, but if that there is that's a little bit putting the horse before the cart.
okay.
So just think big picture.
Okay.
You know,
Well,
if you don't have a
okay,
building that doesn't, I
Maybe
mean, you
my
have a,
thinking big picture is,
Yeah.
hey, guys, in the towns,
Right.
we can get solar free. You don't have to give it to us. Okay, all right,
Right.
okay,
but
all right, I get
that's a
it.
good idea.
Okay. Anybody else have an idea?
Hey, Jerry, like whether it's a steep grant or those local, state grants and everything, is there any way we can reach out to our local state rep, see what's out there, and then actually reach out to the town hall and say, what other
Yeah.
grants are possibly available to us? And then, find out what other senior centers have gotten any local state grants. I haven't gone on, every year, they come out with their bill list, and I could go back and see if I could find the last bill that came out with grants, whether it's for the arts or whatever, and to see if there was any that, show up there. But I think definitely reaching out to our local state rep and saying, hey, what's available for us?
Yeah, Devin Carney has always been supportive of the center. So I have no problem giving him a call and asking him what he could do. Paul Formica, we're sort of on the fringes of his district, but we're still part of his district as state senator. So I have no trouble making those calls to both of them if that's something that the committee thinks should be done. Okay, yeah, okay. All right, everybody's shaking their heads. Okay. Dan, do you have any suggestions?
One thing that is popping into my mind is how much money do we need for the next phase for design development and construction documents?
Yeah.
Because we may not want to go out for bigger money until we know what the bigger money is. And we're not going to know what that is until we get construction documents.
Yeah, that's what I.
So that's my 2 cents.
6 months we need to do. Russell, is that what was the thinking we were talking about? Taking the next 6 months and actually developing that schematic design and getting the funding for it.
All right, yeah, so the next 6 months, I mean, the next major step is for the organization to really look hard at the priorities that and what was put in the conceptual design and determine what's important, what's not, maybe rethinking some stuff.
Mhm.
And then we would go into the schematic design phase with all of that, throw it into the blender and see what comes out. And then we really would be talking real budgets and real numbers. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Dan. The schematic design is through CA, through construction, is the next big feast issue.
Okay,
We don't have to start that process yet, but we have to be thinking about it. So.
okay, all right, BJ.
Yeah,
I have not been involved in this type of a process before, so I don't know the answer, but it does seem to me a little bit of a chicken and egg. I mean, the schematic design, let alone the construction documents, are expensive, right? And so the chicken and the egg is funding on the one hand versus the design documents that can drill down more precisely on how much things are going to cost. But it strikes me that it would be helpful, at least preliminarily, to just kind of scour the waterfront regarding funding. You know, what kind of grants might be available, what might be the appetite for our constituents to make private donations. To get I mean, we're talking obviously, according to the current plans, between 3.4 3.8 to
3.4 to 3.8.
is that reasonable, right? Or are we talking about $1.2 million is all that we think we can raise? In any event, I'm just saying I'd like to get a better feeling for the ability to raise that kind of money before
Okay.
we spend a lot more money on design.
Okay, and I agree with you. And Russell, this is the other point that you made when we talked about, and I developed a very simple matrix for Stephanie to use to show usage per hour, per day of every space in the building. The occupancy, the volume, the traffic. She and I are working on that. And we decided that because we still have the elephant in the room called the pandemic, that we decided that we should, when we need to present that for any reason, that we should look at where we were when we closed the door in 2020, number of people, the traffic. We had over 25,000 visits to that center the year before we had to close, and over 1,500 active members, that kind of moment. And then during the pandemic, and now what we're able to do given the conditions that we're under. And projecting, as we looked at the space on the conceptual plans, what she could do to add simultaneous programming in the new spaces and what the projected usage of those spaces could be. So that last year, that sounds like me. When I see it. So does that make sense, Russ? And
Yes.
BJ, that to actually show how the space is going to be used or is, and the potential volume. I mean, we're right in the middle of rebuilding membership, and it's rebuilding quickly. And the Friends arm of our the 501c3 that does the fundraising for the center just sent out their appeal for fundraising for the programs for the center. And additionally, lots of people sign up for memberships during that drive. So she should have some more solid numbers on rising membership, and then we need to develop usage, post usage, present usage, future projections. Does that make sense?
Right. I think, you know, the rule of thumb generally is you want to have a space used 80 to 85% of the time.
Okay.
Over the course of a normal work day. Obviously, you know, you could evenings as a bonus. So the question is, take the primary, and I say spaces, I mean the primary spaces, you're not every space, but the main meeting rooms, and then determine how much the center is going to use that space, and then what are the opportunities for the community to use those spaces out and beyond that. And then the last 15% is for flexibility. So you can have a special meeting, a special event, and there's room. If you're 100% out, that never works for anybody because then there's no flexibility. But if you have a space that's used 20, you know, this happens in schools a lot. You have a specialty space that's very designed for a single purpose, and that purpose happens once or twice a day. You know, it's kind of a wasted space. So we need to make sure that, you know, to sell this to the community, we got to show that this is going to be used and how the organization's going to ramp up to use it. Maybe you don't have to ramp up. Maybe it's just what you do now, but post-pandemic, we'll call it. So I think that's part of the argument, but that's also part of the study to determine if the space as designed is necessary, or is there some wiggle room in terms of how those spaces are sized. And then we take that as part of the piece in the schematic design when we go to the next level to start refining the design in the program.
Oh, and I want to pick up on one other thing that you just mentioned. We're also developing a comprehensive list of the other organizations that use the center, our community links, the history of the community links so far, and we've already projected some things that we're going to be doing with school kids in the spring. So we want to get a picture that, again, like we said, we're not a full-blown community center, but we are part of the community, of the entire community, and the people use that building for more than just what the members use it for. I mean, between the VFW, the town nurse, and other organizations that actually rent the building for meetings and special meetings. So that matrix that I developed with her for her to use has before and after opening and closing times. And also we will add the addendum of how the space is used by community organizations as well and other members. Does anybody else have something they'd like to say about this?
Yeah, Jerry, would it help at all to raise the dues? Since we're only paying $5 a year?
Okay, Don, don't forget, any dues that are raised or issued or asked for are for programs. Okay,
Okay.
not for the building. Here's the problem that I'm going to be facing and we're going to be facing is the towns know that the center has a nice buffer for our program planning in that we have money in the bank. We
Right.
get money raised by the Friends Committee. We also get money from donations and from membership dues. We are the lowest dues schedule probably anywhere in this area. The other centers charge a heck of a lot more. And they also charge a heck of a lot more for people to take any of the classes that the instructors get paid for. Everybody seems to think our classes are free. They're not. But we have to protect that money. And we also need, that's a board decision, Don, we can discuss that at the board level. Maybe we do need to do that in the future. But right now, we're in pretty good shape and I don't want, and I've already mentioned this to both towns, I don't want them coming after the money that we raised for programs because the towns don't give us any money for programs. Okay.
Okay, I follow you.
Yeah. Okay, Mayor. Okay, Don, you want to finish your thought before I ask
Well,
Mary?
possibly we could just ask for donations.
No,
And
we
not-
will. I mean, we've got to start thinking about fundraising. This committee needs to think about fundraising for this project, not the board for necessarily us, for the committee. We're two separate things. This is the other thing that I got to make sure both towns get reminded of. This is not a subcommittee of the board of directors of the senior center. This is a separate committee. And we are charged with the responsibility of looking into the possible renovation and reconstruction, renovation, expansion of the center. We have to keep the two entities separate because I don't want the town to, either town to come back and say, ask your board for 50 grand, you've got it. Because I'm going to say, as the chair of the board, no.
Mhm.
We have to save that money for Stephanie to spend on her programs. Because,
Okay,
yeah, okay. There could be some changes in the way the towns do things down the road, but right now we have to protect what we have. Mary?
Yeah, thank you.
So one
And then
idea that I haven't heard mentioned yet, as we start formulating construction documents and get, a better and better focus on what components of the building are going to cost,
Right.
You can, as part of fundraising, ask the architects to put together a list of features on the building and what those features cost, and then go out to people and say, would you like to endow a fireplace that costs between $10,000 and $15,000? Would you like to endow a doorway? Whatever. If you segment things off and hold out the possibility of putting a plaque with someone's name next to it, that's a very effective fundraising tool. And we could be able to raise a good chunk of money to fund those things that sort of get peeled off as we value engineer something, so that we don't end up with what Russell was talking about at the beginning. We don't end up with a stripped down building.
Right.
It still has features people want, but they haven't cost taxpayers anything.
Okay, that's interesting because one of the things that I can tell you is that I'm in discussion right now with the VFW, because the VFW's lodge is our building as well. They are trying to decide how to donate money that they need to donate this year. I've already asked if they would donate to this committee for this project. I'm going to be talking to Dave Griswold again. He's as the commander of the VFW. And that actually came up in the discussion because I said, he said, well, usually when we donate money, we donate it for something. And I said, well, you have a wall here in the center already. Down the road, maybe we can dedicate a better wall when we do our renovation or design. And he was really open to that. So I think that's a really good point to make, but because yes, we don't want to be the bare bones of when we do this renovation. It needs to be symbolic of this community. It needs to be an asset of the organizations that take part in the building on a day-to-day or week-to-week or month-to-month basis. They need to be recognized. So maybe that could be possibly part of the pitch that we make to any organization. But I am going to say, I don't want to go to a bank and ask them to donate money and say, we're going to give you a wall that says the name of your bank. That's not going to happen. Okay. It has to be the community. It has to be nonprofit. It has to reflect the municipal law and regulation that we need to have for the building, and also maintaining the character of the building. So yeah, that's a great idea. I think we just
I also think that in a lot of building types like this, we see people donate spaces in the memory of somebody who may have been part of the senior center and loved it. So you may have different parts of the rooms, the sitting areas, the puzzle area. So there's some physical reminder when they walk in. You might get somebody to donate a cupola, but it's probably special to have that. And you can also create I know you've got a memory garden and memorial garden, but you could do a memory wall where people donate in the name of a family member, and it's just a small sum, but it adds up. So those kind of opportunities are really useful in this kind of a building type. But it's definitely a piece of that. And I think you also said there's other uses, like this is still somewhat an emergency center. So, obviously there's some value for the town in that. So there's different pieces we need to.
That's right. Thanks for reminding me about that. Dan, I'm going to come back
if I
to you in a
could-
minute.
If I could just add to the comments from Mary and Russell, as your marketing guy, I think all these are great comments, but they need a lot of our head time to craft a plan that is going to work. And that's not going to happen in January. It's going to take some time.
No, it's when and you're going to have to actually have more of, a lot of that's going to happen when you actually start to have a real building design that you can sell. Right now it's still a dream sequence. So
Yeah, and Russ, I just want to pick up on the memorial aspect. We actually have had a family that coffee corner that's in the building where the coffee is. That was a $3,000 donation from a family as a memorial. So I mean, we do know it's named after their mother. So we do already know how to do that. And I think that, when it is appropriate for us to do that, we can kick that in easily. And I just want to also add that BJ and I are going to meet with Stephanie on the 16th to actually start developing a way to approach people for funding, a sales pitch, as it were. And so after we meet, I can feed back to you what we feel we could actually start to do to put together a document to disseminate to any organization or to use as part of our appeal to whoever we talk to. Is that okay, BJ, for me?
Yeah, well, to put a finer point on it, the question that I've gotten and that I'm hoping that we can address in this document is why? Why does the senior center need to expand in this way? And I think it's a two-part question. Why does it need to expand in this way? And what comfort do we have, we people who are going to be giving money, that the expansion will be well utilized?
Right.
And I want to have a writing that addresses these questions and have everybody's kind of, fuss with it and look at it and comment on it and get on the same page with respect to what's our story.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And it needs to be somewhat concrete. It can't just be aspirational. It can't just be, if we build it, they will come. And how do you know that? Well, just because I believe it. That's not good enough, right?
No.
So we need, a pitch piece is a good way to describe it, but we need an explanation of why this makes sense, why it's needed, and why it will benefit the community.
Okay. Dan, I didn't forget you. Did you have something you wanted to say? Turn your
I
mic.
just wanted to alert you that poor Mary had her hand up for minutes and no one was calling on her. So I'm fine.
Okay. All right. I'm sorry, Mary. It's hard to do on Zoom when I've got like 10 windows in front of me. Okay.
Hey, Jerry.
Yes.
Can we go back for a minute to Don's question? I don't understand the dues philosophy. How much money does the center collect every year approximately in dues?
I'm not sure I can answer that question without Stephanie, okay? Because the board doesn't keep track of what comes in.
Well, about how many members does the center have?
Well, when we shut the doors for the pandemic, we had 1,546 members. Okay.
1,500?
Active paid
Okay.
members on the boat.
So if everybody contributed $5, that's $7,500.
No, we're talking Old Lyme, and outside of the two towns. So we're talking $5 or $10. Okay.
So maybe it was $10,000.
But
Okay.
you have to understand that a lot of times people will come in to join the center and spontaneously hand her a $20 bill and say, sign me up and keep the change. Okay. But I can tell you that every year until we shut down, she spends around $20,000 a year on programs, 22,000. Right now, we have in the account a substantial amount of money because there was a legacy that was litigated a few years ago where someone actually left the center $125,000. We're still drawing on that at this point. The Friends gave us a $20,000 donation 3 years ago. They may be able to raise that amount again this time with this drive because they haven't done anything for the last 2 years. But
my question is, why do we want to keep it at as low as $5? And you said that that's remarkably low compared to every other senior center. If this were a commercial enterprise, which it isn't, I understand, you would ask the question, is this a reasonable price? And would our customers pay more happily? Or if we raise the price, would we lose a bunch of customers? So I'm curious to know what the answer to that is. But let me also just mention that David Kelsey, who is the chairman of the Old Lyme Board of Finance, typically asks this question, and he asked it in the context of the senior center requesting money from the town of Old Lyme. Now, historically, nobody has had any answer to his question as to why it's that. It just is what it is. And and it has not resulted in the town of Old Lyme being reluctant to make whatever, provide whatever financial support it needs to. But it's a bug up his butt.
I have an answer.
And I think it's a legitimate question.
I have an answer to your legitimate question, and here's the legitimate answer. The money that we raise through the center, through donations and memberships and legacies, are for programs, because neither town gives us money for programs. His questioning
That's not,
the membership dues, stop, Dan, let me finish. His questioning the membership dues leads me to think that he does not understand that that's what that money is raised for. Because the towns are responsible for the capital improvements and the buildings and the grounds, not the programs. And unless that changed, it would be have to be rewriting our constitution and bylaws in order for us to do that. Raising the membership dues, we actually did raise them. Everybody was $5 for a while. And I'm also going to tell you that you have to understand that there's the assumption that everybody has the ability to pay higher rates in this town, in these two towns, and that we don't have people who need to pay lower rates. They also pay for the classes that they take. It's not like you get a membership and everything else is free, which I think he is under the misconception that that's what happens as well.
And I have absolutely no appetite for defending David Kelsey in this or anything else. I'm just telling you that it's an issue that he's raised. But what I'm inferring is that the money raised from the $5 fees and the program fees are sufficient to fund the existing programs, and therefore there's no need to raise the annual dues. But then, and I don't want to take much more time in this meeting, but it's something that we can discuss in the future, whether the uses of the membership fees can be expanded. I mean, when I'm thinking, I mean, as an example, how are we going to get the $3.5 million? Well, one place we might get some of it is from a bank. A bank could give us a mortgage, right, for some portion of it. But it's only going to do that if we have cash flow available to amortize that mortgage. So at least theoretically, it seems to me a reasonable question to ask, you know, could we generate some annual cash flow sufficient to amortize a mortgage? I don't know the answer to that without running the numbers, you know, but it's not what we're set up to do at this point.
I'm not sure if that's an appropriate, if this committee is the appropriate place to actually have that discussion. I think we have to have that discussion with the towns from the board perspective, not necessarily this committee at this point. Dan, you're shaking your head. Yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
I thought that the towns paid for the senior center employees.
Yes, the staff.
Yeah,
It's
so
a
that's
municipal agency.
programming, and we paid
No.
for Stephanie and other employees of the center.
No, that comes under the capital and other budget, the operating budget of Stephanie's budget that's separate from the programming that's done. She develops.
So the dues people pay don't even pay for the employees' salaries at the
No, they
center.
can't. No. When the center first opened and up until.
We're getting sidetracked, Jerry. I don't need to
Yeah, I
bog the
know.
whole
No,
meeting
no,
down in
no. The
this, so
center
I'll
doesn't
stop.
pay. No, the center can't pay for employee salaries. I'll just leave it at that. And we will have that discussion at another time. Okay. Can we move on?
And Jerry, can we just, one quick question.
Okay.
I can't stress the importance of us getting a grant. Anytime, whether we're trying to get supports of, you know, for Lyme or from Old Lyme, going there saying we're getting $500,000, we're getting 250,000, whatever it is just a huge sales point to help them saying, yes, okay, Lyme, we're committing $1 million or, you know, whatever. Going in there, not having that commitment is always difficult because that's, you know, we've gone through this enough. They always say, well, have you pursued grants? Have you seen any of that? So I rather not rush the process even if, we don't get approval for a grant, 8 months out, wait
Okay.
till we have that. And that helps us to kind of look at that. And then Russell, I wouldn't go any further than schematic design. And I know, Dan, you mentioned taking the CD. I think just taking it to the schematic design and, at that point, that would be it, until we actually get money and then work to a budget on that.
Yeah.
No, I don't disagree with that. We would certainly schematic and then stop and there'd be fundraising and there'd be all that. But what I disagree with, and I've seen towns do that, they hire an architecture firm for conceptual, they hire one for schematic design, then they hire another firm to do the future. And it's the biggest waste of money that so we need to hire a firm for the project, but only approve schematic. If we don't go any further, we don't go any further, and that's the way it is. But that's my point, is the next step is hiring a firm, but you're not committed, you're absolutely not committed beyond schematic. And in our own firm, we've had schematic and fundraising last 3 years before you go to the next phase. So I would agree with that, but I think we have to have the momentum that that's the plan. But we all know how long it takes to get things approved. So yeah, I agree.
And if the center wants to spend money
Both of you, Dan.
in fiscal year 2022, 2023, that request needs to be into the towns really within the next few weeks, because the selectmen are putting together the budget now for deliberation in January and February.
Okay, that's for Lyme. Old Lyme is a little bit more extended out. We can start the process, but Old Lyme is not firmly like the end of February. I know that.
Well, Jerry, and since we have two representatives here from the town of Lyme, Dan, would it be appropriate for this, this committee to come back and say, we would like, funding, whatever, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for a schematic design?
Yeah. Well, I can answer that for John and Dan, because on the 20th of this month, I'm going to go present to the Board of Selectmen up in Lyme.
But are you going to ask for funding?
Yeah, I'm going to ask that you start thinking about the funding, Dan. Okay, absolutely.
But they're going to want to know an amount. So,
Well, yeah, so I
Russell and
did ask.
myself should come up with an amount that we
Well,
feel
and what it's for. What are we getting
Right.
for what you're asking for? And those are
Right.
questions that need good answers, certainly.
Right, and we should, you're absolutely right. You need to have a number that we're asking for, and then what the next phases will essentially cost, even though that's not likely to go ahead right away. But if fiscal year goes June to June, or July to June,
July.
so if we're gonna do schematic and that's the first phase, and we're not going to go any further, we're going to be committed not to go any further until July of 2023. So, there is, I don't know if there's a way to work around that if suddenly everything comes in, but probably there's going to be a year from that point to the next step. And committees need to know that there'll be another request for fees in 2023 for X.
Well,
Yeah.
Russell, let's talk about that. So say if we take this approach, we get, this town's sum and
Yeah.
it's out to 23. If we're going to decide to move forward, we get a grant, we come back, the size of this would require a referendum.
Right.
You don't think so, Dan? We could get this approved locally? You don't think they push it to a referendum?
Well,
vote?
the budgeted amount would be approved during the annual budget review process. So in Lyme's case, we have a town meeting in May to approve the budget. Whatever the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance authorizes to be included in that budget would be approved at a town meeting. This would not, in my opinion, require a separate referendum.
I think Ben's talking
as-
about the building, not the fees.
Whoa.
But
Here's the issue with whatever we ask for and whatever we think we're going to get grants for. And I don't know what Old Lyme's regulations are, but I do understand that if, say, Ken, we got a state grant in the next 2 to 3 months or 6 months, we were able to get a steep grant. Do the state grants have a different process for actually requiring us to hire somebody? Or can we just say, we really like point one, we want to keep them for this next phase? We
You would
don't
have,
have to go out to an RFP, we don't have to go out to a bid until we actually get the construction plan, because those are the bidding places. But
All
if
right.
we do get certain kinds of money coming in, they may have different requirements for how we actually hire somebody. So,
Let me just go back. We're conflating a couple of different issues. Dan is right that money that is approved by the Board of Finance of Old Lyme, and I assume it's similarly true in Lyme, as part of the budget process, is then adopted by the town at a town meeting, and whatever is in the budget for that year, that's the only vote that's required. If then a need for funds arises during the year outside of the budget, and at least in Old Lyme, if that amount is under $20,000, the Board of Finance can authorize it. If it's over 20,000, we need a town meeting to authorize it. What is different from that, though, is if the towns now are going to approve the development or the expansion of the senior center at a price of multi-millions of dollars, even though that may be funded with grants, typically the town has to accept the grant, and that becomes a liability on the town's books. So I'm confident that at such time as the towns of Lyme and Old Lyme decide, yes, we're going to renovate and expand the senior center, that will require town meetings to approve that plan at some point in the future.
so then PJ, let me ask you this. So if we ask for $1.5 million from Lyme, they don't need a referendum for that. That would just be part of their budget.
Well, if it is approved as part of the budget process.
Okay.
Right? Now, what we were talking about, and you were talking about, Ken, 5 minutes ago, wasn't going to Lyme and Old Lyme today for construction financing,
Oh.
but just for design financing, in order of magnitude in the tens of thousands of dollars. And that we absolutely should do during this budget season.
okay,
No,
yeah,
so,
that's my plan.
hold on, Jerry. So, and I understand that, PJ. Say okay, we get the budget approved for schematic design. Say it's the end of 22. And we got a grant, we have the referendum, we have the schematic design done, and we're looking at a project that's gonna cost us $4 million at the end of 22. How do we as a committee come to those both towns? Would that require just town meetings, or is that a referendum vote?
Well, what's your understanding of the difference between a referendum and a town meeting? What we have in Old Lyme are town meetings. You post it and people come to town hall or not, and vote. I don't know what the distinction is between that and a referendum for this purpose.
A referendum would actually be a paper ballot, and it'd be a step above the actual town meeting. And I didn't know, I'm just trying to figure, is there a cap? Maybe John could answer that if there's a certain dollar amount that triggers a referendum vote versus.
I'm going to
John,
pivot this to Dan because he knows this better than me, but it is a town meeting, not referendum approach in the town of Lyme. So I don't think there's Dan, you can probably fill that in better than me.
I think we're all trying to make comparisons to Regional School District 18, where
True.
they have their annual town, they have their annual towns referendum. And there's no comparison because the senior center is a part of the town of Lyme and is part of the town of Old Lyme. So the towns have to approve their budget. I don't believe, although it's an interesting idea, having the senior center go out for a mortgage, I don't believe they could possibly do that. They would need the towns, both Lyme and Old Lyme, to bond whatever amount of money they want to bond. And it could be
I
that.
think that's right. I think
I'm sorry?
that's right. And
it could be that Lyme wants to pay it off a certain way and Old Lyme wants to do it a separate way. So there needs to be a lot of discussions between
Mhm.
the leadership of Lyme and Old Lyme to decide how we're going to do this.
This has always been the conundrum that we're in, is that this is a municipal agency that's shared by 2 towns, not 1 town. So with 2 different budget processes. So that's why I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to go to the boards of selectmen first. I'm going to go on the 20th to the Board of Selectmen meeting. And if any of you want to come at 3:30 on the 20th up in Lyme, I'm going to present and I am going to start asking for money. But I am also going to, I've already asked point 1 if we continue with them, and if even not, because they're just helping us at this point. If they would just let me know if we went to a schematic design hire for them, kept them to hire and hired them, how much do they think it would cost? So that I could actually have a ballpark.
I would ask them 2 questions. I would ask them what the
Okay.
schematic, but then what's the full fee? So that when we go to the Board of Finance, they can understand what the additional costs are after that, because.
Okay, so ask for the bulk and ask for the estimate and ask for a breakdown of that.
Yeah, a breakdown. I mean, obviously, my guess is that they're gonna work on a percentage basis, and that's gonna matter what the cost of the project is, but schematic is, they'll probably do it. It would be a fixed fee because we don't know the cost yet. We have an idea now.
Right.
And then I guess the follow-up question, which we don't have to answer, but is it in the purview to just continue with point
Yeah.
1, or is there another process we'd have to go through
That's
hiring?
what I have to find out. I have to
I
find
don't
out
know
the
that.
legalities of continuing with them, because if we, like I said before, if for some reason we get a grant in the next 6 months from the state or from some other entity, they may have different rules about how to hire somebody for the particular project.
Well, Jerry, what you need to find out is how we solicited for their services. If we
Correct.
solicited for their services that we have the option to continue on with them, you would be protected. If we just said it was for conceptual design, no, we would have to go back out.
Yeah, Ken's right. So it depends on what we said in the original proposal, if we left it open to continue with them.
Okay. All right. Okay, so we have to look back at their contract that we had with them.
Well, not the contract, the proposal, the proposal, the RFP that
The
went out.
RFP language.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, yeah, we did make it clear in the RFP actually that there's no promise of continuing.
right. But
Whoever we hired.
is there a promise to continue?
Okay. Okay.
So Ken's absolutely right, because that's the piece that we need to have.
Okay, all right.
But I would ask them, they are our best resource at the moment to get some fees. Obviously this doesn't, just tell them this is for us to get funding. This isn't there's no guarantee they're going to be the ones, but they're in the best position at this moment in time
To actually give us that information.
to give us that information. Right.
Okay, yeah, all right. I've been working with Greg. He's been wonderful about thinking about this already. Okay, I'll talk to Rick. Okay, anybody else have a comment or a question? Mary, Skip, Don, anybody? All right, so recap. We need 6 months of a window at this point to start generating money and consensus in the community about why we're doing what we're doing, presenting what information is concrete, but also, I'm sorry, a little aspirational, to convince people to give us money, either in the public or private sector, and also to apply for any other funding that we can get our hands on. And I need help with that. I need help from all of you who have had experience with how to access any kind of funding sources to help me do that. Because I'm working with Courtney's office. I'm working on a couple of other things, but I can't do it all. And I need some help. Okay, so if you come up with ideas, you can funnel them to me, or you can let me know how it can be approached. BJ, you and I will, and Stephanie will develop that document that will be a tool for people to use, any of us to use for any source that we might approach. I've talked to Kathleen Taylor at OMB about steep grants. There's no money available. She has told me that I can call her whenever if they have the money that's available when we want to apply for a steep grant. It's still, again, a bit of a crapshoot with any state grants because the towns still ultimately have the decision about how to use that money. Okay, so let me know what you want, what you can come up with. If you know people that you can approach on your own to donate, make sure that when they write the check, it comes and you send it to me and I deposit it with the town of Old Lyme into the account that we have, that it's made out to the Lyme Senior Center Building Committee and not the Senior Center. Okay, that has to be, we have to prevent the commingling of funds at this point. That's why I set up a separate account when we first got our first funding from the town. Mary.
So maybe the rest of you can correct me if this is wrong, but in my mind, one way of thinking about this is to go to the town of Lyme and say, we have a proposal for a $900,000 building, and to go to the town of Old Lyme and say, we have a proposal for a $2.7 million building. I mean, those are roughly the proportions that each town would be responsible for. And if you start from that premise, but say, these are the conceptual plans for the building, rather than hit each town with a big total,
right.
I think you can, I mean, this is just a little thing, but I think you can avoid a little sticker shock that way.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I also know that everybody, Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. I know that both towns are fully cognizant of their split. 75-25.
I know I am, but I'm not sure everybody is.
Okay, no, Mary, that's a great point. When I see, but my feeling has been, I need the boards of selectmen to be on board with this just as much as the boards of finance. And frankly, I think it's only polite to go to them first, if not legally, the best thing to do is to approach the boards of selectmen.
It's
Right.
absolutely, Jerry, it's
Correct me if I'm
absolutely
wrong.
necessary. The boards of finance respond to the boards of selectmen. The boards of selectmen have to propose or determine that an expense is justified. So you're
Exactly.
absolutely right in going to the board of selectmen.
See, that's my plan. I've been thinking that I've been seeing too many end games around boards of selectmen, and not just here, but in other places. So my thinking as a chair of this committee is for transparency, for cooperation, for the idea that we're doing this the right way, that I approach the boards of selectmen. I want to do that this month.
Yeah, that's the right thing to do.
Right, I'm not arguing with the process. What I was trying to suggest is that if you break down the quantities for each town, there may be a threshold of $1 million beyond which, and I don't know if that threshold bar is moved, beyond which you do have to go out for bonding. And if the threshold is under $1 million, perhaps the town of Lyme doesn't necessarily have to go out for bonding. I don't know, I'm asking
We're
that
getting ahead
question.
of ourselves again, though. We're getting ahead of ourselves. The next phase is to get money for the schematic design. Okay, and to figure out whether we can continue with point one, or if we have to do a different process to hire. Okay.
And I think what you need to know for the selectmen's meeting, both in Lyme and Old Lyme, is how much money do you need for the next phase?
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly
that's
it,
what-
Dan. Thank you. Yeah, and actually ask point one, what they think their estimate would be for a schematic design only at this point. And again, one of the things they're gonna run into is the land use. If there has to be any site improvement, additional parking lot, because you're increasing the occupancy rate, you're gonna necessarily have to increase your parking spaces. What might happen with the actual improvement of the land? And that agreement in 1994 is, Lyme owns the land, not
Yeah.
Lyme.
And this is for the lawyers to figure out.
And
but
that's
this-
the lawyers are gonna figure that out.
But it is very specific in that agreement, how much land will be allowed to be covered by a senior center. And so my guess is if and when a final design is done, I imagine it's just an adjustment and a vote on the old Lyme selectmen, because I think that, but somebody's got to approve that an additional amount of coverage is allowed. And I don't remember if the parking lot was that clear, because the parking is sort of town woods and senior center,
Well,
it's sort of divided, but
The center.
that's for them to figure out, yeah.
the Senate-
Hey,
yeah, the
what I
Senate-
just heard
the
is
Senate
Old
doesn't
Lyme is
have-
paying for all the parking.
Yeah, I really don't think that the center is the subdivided lot. I think the center is just part of town's wood.
It is. I
Yeah.
mean, that's my reading of it, but I'm not a lawyer, but it doesn't seem like all of Town Woods is one big piece of land, and they just gave some square footage for the senior center.
Yeah, well, that's cool, because that actually gives us some flexibility if we want to expand the lawn, or the possibility of adding parking or whatever. It might not be as difficult. Okay, all right, okay, can we move on?
Yeah.
Okay, let's please. Skip, do you have anything you want to say? I don't want to shut everybody off here. Okay. Okay, the only other thing on the agenda that maybe before we ask if there's any other new business is I sent you the meeting schedule for 2022. I have to submit it in November by the end of the month for the following year. And it takes us up to January 2023. Is 5 o'clock still okay with you guys for?
Yes.
meeting time? The second
Mhm.
Wednesday of the month, we agreed was okay, but I just wanted to make sure that the time was okay. Is that all right with everybody still?
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
all right. You can let me know if you have any conflicts individually. All right, is there anything under other new business that you'd like to bring up? Very productive meeting in a lot of ways. We went off on some tangents, but some good ones. Anything? Okay. Our next meeting is January 12th, 2022. Okay, we're already hitting the next year. Hi, Dan. Bye, Dan. Can I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
All right.
Did we have any public comment? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
No.
I'm sorry. Mr. Tenza, you've been so patient.
Yeah, no.
He
thank you.
hasn't moved a bit.
Do you
Nope,
have
good.
anything you'd like to say? I'm sorry. Thanks, Dan.
No,
I
I
got
just, I mean, I just want to introduce myself, Rob Tenza with Arcadis. We offer OPM services. I know Mr. Baega is very familiar with what we do as we've worked together. He's worked with my current senior project manager, Jack Butkus, on numerous projects. But yeah, we've just been following your project from the inception, and this might be very premature, but if there's been any thought of hiring an OPM to manage your project and help as you work your way through the phases, and if there's any opportunity where you'd want us to present to the committee on what we can do and how we could help, we'd love to do that.
Okay,
And that is all.
great. Well, thank you for being so patient.
Yeah, no problem.
Normally I try to keep us under an hour for these meetings, but it's really nice when we have a lot to say and a lot to do.
Yeah, no, it sounds like a great committee. Everybody seems very engaged and knowledgeable, so that's going to be
Thank you.
helpful.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else?
Happy holidays to everybody.
Absolutely. Happy
absolutely.
holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Jerry.
Yeah,
everyone.
thanks, guys. Stay safe, stay warm. Okay. and wear a mask if you want to. Okay. A motion for adjournment, please. I had BJ make the motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay. And any further discussion? All those in favor?
aye.
Stay safe. Okay. Good night, folks.
Good night.